The galaxy trembled as humanity's conquest continued its relentless march across the stars. No fleet was safe, no empire was spared. Systems once secure under the protection of powerful alliances now found themselves at the mercy of Earth's growing war machine. Earth had become the unchallenged power in the galaxy, and resistance seemed futile. In the wake of the Terran Dominion's destruction, the galaxy's remaining empires were forced into a harsh reality. The once proud Council, which had ruled over galactic affairs, was now a shadow of its former self. Its power was diminishing with every planet Earth captured. No one dared to stand against humanity, not after the fall of the Terrans. The Council's authority had collapsed, its leaders powerless to stop Earth's rise. Yet, not all hope was lost. Some factions, desperate to hold on to their sovereignty, began to form secret coalitions, quietly preparing for a final stand against Earth. One such faction was the Raldori Confederation, a group of independent star systems that had remained neutral in the conflict, hoping to avoid drawing attention. But now they were being forced to take action. They knew they could not defeat humanity alone, but perhaps, with the right allies, they might stand a chance. The Raldori sent covert envoys to distant corners of the galaxy, seeking any who might dare to join their cause. The message was simple: we must unite or perish. They called on old enemies, longtime allies of the Galactic Council, and even species who had suffered under Earth's new reign to join them in a final, desperate effort to end humanity's dominance. The galaxy's response was mixed. Some factions remained fearful, unwilling to risk their lives in the face of Earth's terrifying strength. Others, however, saw an opportunity to fight back, their hatred for humanity outweighing their fear. Among them were the Valerian Reapers, a brutal race of warriors who had once been enemies of the Council but had never directly faced humanity in battle. They were eager for revenge, and their hatred of Earth's actions burned like a raging fire. The time had come. The galaxy's first unified resistance began to take shape. Secretly, alliances were formed, military plans were drawn, and weapons were built. But even as they prepared for the inevitable war, a question lingered. Would they be able to stop the unstoppable? The sheer might of Earth's military, the advanced technology, and the strategic genius behind the Ghost of Earth fleet made it seem like an impossible task. Still, they had no choice. The leader of the Raldori Confederation, High Commander Jara Voss, knew that this was their last chance. She addressed her people, speaking with a fire that had not been seen in years. "We may be few, but we are not weak," she said, her voice strong. "We stand not only for our own survival, but for the freedom of the entire galaxy. If humanity has chosen war, then war they shall have. But we will make them regret it. Together, we are stronger. Together, we will fight." The resistance began to gather in the distant corners of space, their fleets forming under the shadow of the stars. They were few, but they were determined. They believed that if they could strike quickly and decisively, they might be able to weaken humanity's hold on the galaxy. They knew that their chances were slim, but they had no other choice. This was their fight for survival. Meanwhile, on Earth, the leaders of the human war effort were growing more confident with each victory. The last major resistance had crumbled, and the galaxy was slowly falling under humanity's rule. But despite the victory after victory, there was something growing deep within Earth's leadership. A suspicion. They knew that their enemies were out there, watching, waiting for their moment to strike. Humanity had never known peace, and now, with their war machine in full swing, they couldn't stop wondering if perhaps, somewhere in the vast reaches of the galaxy, a new, unified enemy was quietly plotting their downfall. A wave of anticipation swept across both sides of the galaxy. The resistance was ready to fight, and humanity's war machine was prepared to crush them. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Would humanity's fury prove too much for the galaxy's last hope, or would the resistance find a way to take down the unstoppable force that was humanity? The battle for the galaxy was about to enter its most dangerous phase, and with it, the final test of humanity's resolve and the galaxy's will to survive. The final battle was drawing closer, and both sides could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them. Across the vastness of space, two great forces, prepared for the inevitable clash that would determine the future of all known life. On one side, humanity's war machine, led by the Ghost of Earth fleet, stood poised for the last act in their campaign to dominate the galaxy. On the other, a united resistance, desperate but determined, was ready to face what seemed to be an unstoppable force. The Resistance's fleet had grown stronger, their numbers swelling with every passing week as more systems joined their cause. They had gathered an impressive array of ships, but they knew that their strength was still far from enough to challenge Earth's might. Yet there was something else the Resistance had gained, something Earth had underestimated: the element of surprise. Commander Jara Voss, the leader of the Reldori Confederation, had a plan. A bold, daring plan that could turn the tide. She knew that the only way to stand a chance against humanity was to strike at the heart of the Ghost of Earth fleet, its command structure. If they could take down the leaders of the fleet, maybe, just maybe, the entire war machine could crumble. The Resistance fleet gathered in secret near the edge of the Andromeda system, far from the watchful eyes of humanity's scouts. The plan was risky, the stakes higher than ever, but it was their only hope. As the fleet prepared for launch, there was a sense of resolve in the air. This would be the moment that defined the galaxy's future. Meanwhile, on Earth, the leaders of humanity's war effort were growing more confident by the day. The galaxy had fallen in line, and Earth had been victorious in almost every conflict. The Council was a distant memory, a symbol of a weaker, more fragile time. Humanity was. Now the unquestioned ruler of the stars, and their war machine was unstoppable. Or so they thought. The commander of the Ghost of Earth fleet, Admiral Cassandra Thorne, sat in her command chair, watching the holographic maps of the galaxy shift. Her fleet was on the move again, sweeping through systems like a storm. It had been years since they'd abandoned diplomacy, and the galaxy had paid the price. But now, with the galaxy firmly in their grasp, there was no turning back. Thorne had been through countless battles, and she knew the Resistance was growing bolder. But Earth was prepared for any challenge. They had crushed every rebellion, torn through every enemy, and now the final battle loomed. She couldn't afford to underestimate the Resistance, but she also knew the truth. Humanity had the firepower, the technology, and the will to win. The final showdown began as the Resistance fleet emerged from the dark reaches of space, hurtling toward the heart of Earth's empire. The fleet moved like a serpent, swift and silent, hoping to avoid detection until it was too late for humanity to respond. They were going for the kill, the command ship, the flagship of the Ghost of Earth fleet. As the two fleets closed in, the tension was unbearable. The battle was about to begin. On one side, humanity's mighty war machine, confident and unyielding. On the other, the last hope of the galaxy, fighting for freedom and survival. The first volley of fire shattered the silence of space as the Resistance's ships engaged the Ghost of Earth fleet. Explosions rocked the void, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble at the ferocity of the clash. The Resistance was fighting for their lives, but Earth was relentless, its warships cutting through the Resistance with devastating precision. But there was a twist. As the battle raged on, Admiral Thorne received an unexpected report. A covert strike force, one of the Resistance's most skilled teams, had successfully infiltrated the Ghost of Earth flagship. They were inside, heading straight for her command center. The news sent a shockwave through her, but she quickly regained her composure. It was a dangerous gamble, but humanity's power was still enough to crush the Resistance if they could. Just hold on long enough. Back in the heart of the battle, Jara Voss led the charge. Her ship, the heart of the resistance fleet, was surrounded by enemy fire, but she remained focused. Every second counted. She knew that the resistance had to succeed, or the galaxy would be lost forever. Through the chaos of the battle, Yara and her team reached their destination. They were inside the flagship, fighting their way through corridors filled with enemy soldiers. The final confrontation was imminent. On the bridge of the Ghost of Earth, Admiral Thorne watched in disbelief as the Resistance forces breached her ship. Her calm demeanor faltered for just a moment, but she quickly regained control. "Hold them off," she commanded. "We cannot let them reach the command center." It was a race against time. As the Resistance team made their way toward the command center, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Victory or defeat would hinge on this one moment. With a final push, Yara and her team broke into the command center. It was a moment of triumph, until the lights flickered and the holographic map of the galaxy went dark. A quiet voice came over the intercom. "Earth has won." But it wasn't Earth that had won. It was the galaxy. The Resistance had done the impossible. They had infiltrated the heart of the... As the weeks passed, the galaxy's uncertainty grew. Humanity's Ghost of Earth fleet, a symbol of their newfound strength, continued to press forward, striking without warning. Whole star systems vanished without a trace, their once thriving planets reduced to debris in the wake of humanity's wrath. The galaxy had never seen such devastation, and no one knew where humanity would strike next. The Galactic Council, once the symbol of order in the universe, was in disarray. Their old ways of diplomacy and treaties were no match for the unyielding force of Earth's military power. It was a humiliating reality they could no longer ignore. Leaders across the galaxy debated fiercely in their war rooms, some pleading for peace, others calling for an all-out assault to crush humanity. But deep down, they all knew they were facing an entirely different kind of enemy now, one that wasn't interested in talks, negotiations, or treaties. Humanity was done with peace. The next target was the Saurian Dominion, an ancient and powerful race that had long dominated the outer rim of the galaxy. The Saurians, known for their cunning strategies and vast fleets, had once been considered untouchable. But when Earth's fleet appeared at their doorstep, everything changed. The Saurians thought they could handle a few skirmishes, but they quickly learned that humanity's strategy was unlike anything they had ever faced. The Saurian defenses were formidable, but humanity's tactics were brutal and efficient. No mercy was given, no prisoners taken. The first battle was a massive confrontation. The Saurian Dominion sent out their entire fleet to engage the Ghost of Earth, but humanity's ships were fast, their technology superior. They struck swiftly, dismantling Saurian warships with precision. The Saurians tried to regroup, but their communications were intercepted by humanity's advanced AI systems, which rendered their strategies useless. It wasn't long before the once mighty Saurian fleet was in full retreat, their warships scattered and broken. The battle left the Saurian Dominion in ruins, their pride shattered. Humanity had not only defeated them, it had humiliated them. The rest of the galaxy watched in shock as news of the Saurian defeat spread. Planets and empires that had once felt safe behind their walls began to panic. If the Saurians, the most powerful race in the Outer Rim, could fall so easily, what hope did they have? Fear swept across the stars, and whispers of a new age of conquest began to spread. The galaxy's old powers knew that the balance of power had shifted, and there was no turning back. In the aftermath of the Saurian destruction, humanity's war machine moved on. Earth had no intention of stopping. The message was clear. The galaxy would bow to their will, or they would be crushed underfoot. Each new victory only fueled humanity's resolve. The Ghost of Earth was unstoppable, and every planet they encountered was left trembling in its wake. As humanity's forces continued their relentless march, the Galactic Council made one final attempt to negotiate. In a last-ditch effort to avoid full-scale war, the leaders of the Council sent a delegation to Earth, hoping to reason with the humans. The Council had underestimated the sheer fury of the species they had abandoned. The delegation arrived on Earth expecting to find a broken, desperate people. Instead, they were met with the cold reality of humanity's new power. On Earth, the representatives were shown the full extent of the war fleet. It was a show of strength and dominance. The Council delegates were given a choice: surrender to humanity's rule or face utter destruction. The message was clear: peace was no longer an option. The delegation returned to the Council in disgrace. The idea of negotiation had been shattered. The galaxy's leaders now knew what humanity's message meant. Earth would never again be a victim. They had chosen power, and they would stop at nothing to ensure their survival. Humanity was not just defending their home anymore. They were on the offensive, and they would take whatever they wanted. The response from the Council was divided. Some factions insisted on launching an immediate military response, hoping to crush humanity before they became too powerful. Others, however, realized the futility of resistance. Earth's fleet was too powerful, too determined. The balance of power had already shifted. The Council was faced with an impossible decision: surrender or face annihilation. Meanwhile, humanity's war machine continued to expand. The Ghost of Earth was no longer a single fleet, but a growing armada that stretched across the stars. No corner of the galaxy was safe from the reach of Earth's vengeance. With every victory, humanity's resolve hardened. Every alien empire that fell, every world they claimed, was a reminder to the galaxy: humanity was not to be underestimated. The galaxy had underestimated Earth once before, and now they were paying the price. No longer would humanity beg for help. No longer would they rely on others for protection. Earth had found its own strength, and with it, they were ready to reshape the galaxy in their image. The galaxy watched in terror as the age of humanity's rise to power began in full force. And for the first time in millennia, the balance of power had shifted. The galaxy's greatest fear had awakened, and there was no turning back. The galaxy had never experienced anything like it. Humanity's war machine, relentless and unyielding, continued its march across the stars, leaving devastation in its wake. One by one, empires that once ruled entire sectors of space were falling, their once proud fleets shattered and their capitals reduced to ashes. The Ghost of Earth fleet had become a nightmare the galaxy could not escape. What had once been a desperate struggle for survival had now turned into a full-scale conquest. The Terek Dominion, one of the galaxy's oldest and most feared empires, was next in line. Known for their brutal military tactics and indomitable warriors, the Teraks had been a symbol of power for millennia. They had never known defeat, but they had underestimated humanity. The Terak fleet gathered in full force, confident they could drive Earth's forces back. They believed that their advanced ships and battle-hardened soldiers could withstand anything. But they were wrong. The first encounter was nothing short of catastrophic for the Tereks. The Earth fleet, though smaller in number, was faster and more efficient, its technology more advanced than anything the Tereks had ever faced. The humans struck without warning, using their superior tactics to overwhelm the Terak defenses. The battle raged for hours, but it was clear from the start that humanity was in control. The Tereks fought fiercely, their warriors showing no mercy. They had fought wars for centuries, but this was different. Their ships, once the pride of their fleet, were torn apart by Earth's deadly weaponry. The humans didn't just destroy ships, they dismantled entire strategies, rendering the Terek's battle plans useless. The Tereks tried to regroup, but humanity's fleet moved too fast, striking in waves that left no time for counterattacks. It was a one-sided massacre. As the last of the Terek fleet crumbled, their empire, once the most powerful in the galaxy, lay in ruins. Terran forces fled into the depths of space, scattered and broken. Their pride was shattered, and their strength had been proven to be nothing in the face of humanity's fury. The Terran dominion was no more. News of the Terran defeat spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Planets that had once been confident in their security now faced the terrifying reality. Humanity was unstoppable. The Council's warning had come. Too late. Those who had once laughed at Earth's requests for alliances, those who had dismissed humanity as weak, were now filled with dread. Earth's rise to power was swift, and it showed no signs of slowing. The fear was palpable. Alien empires, big and small, began to prepare for the worst. Some tried to fortify their defenses, hoping to stave off humanity's wrath. Others began to make secret alliances, hoping to survive by submitting to Earth's rule. But there was one truth that no one could escape. Humanity was in control now, and anyone who dared to stand in their way would fall. As the days turned into weeks, the galaxy watched in awe and fear. The Ghost of Earth fleet moved from system to system, conquering planets, forcing leaders to bend the knee, and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Entire colonies, once thriving with life, were reduced to barren wastelands. There was no mercy, no negotiation. Humanity had made its decision, and it was clear. Peace was no longer an option. In the aftermath of the Terran defeat, the remaining empires held desperate meetings discussing how they could possibly stop the Earth fleet, but no one had an answer. The humans had shown that their military might was beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Their fleets were too powerful, their weapons too deadly. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and now it was paying the price. As Earth's forces continued to expand, the Council made one final, desperate decision. They decided to send emissaries to Earth, hoping to broker some kind of peace, but the humans had no intention of negotiating. The message was clear. Those who wanted to survive would have to submit. There would be no more diplomacy, no more talk of peace. Humanity had chosen power, and it would not back down. The emissaries arrived on Earth, but they were met not with kindness, but with an ultimatum. Humanity's message was simple: submit to our rule or face annihilation. There would be no second chances. The Council emissaries, realizing the gravity of the situation, returned to their respective empires with the grim news. Earth had made its decision, and the galaxy's greatest fear had come true. The galaxy was on edge. Across every star system, the news spread like wildfire, and it left a chill in the air. Humanity, once a hopeful species seeking peace and unity, had made a choice that would change everything. The message was clear. Humanity has abandoned diplomacy. The Galactic Council, a body that had once governed the vastness of the galaxy, trembled in fear. They had expected humanity to follow the rules, to continue begging for peace, to keep asking for help as they had always done. But something had changed. No longer would humanity kneel before the powers of the galaxy. No longer would they plead for alliances that never came. After years of rejection, betrayal, and isolation, humanity had made a choice. Enough was enough. Earth, a planet once considered weak by many in the galaxy, was now a force to be reckoned with. The once peaceful planet, focused on survival, had quietly started to build a war fleet in secret. In hidden factories beneath the surface of Earth's barren deserts, the finest minds of humanity worked tirelessly. They had taken what little resources they had left and poured them into building the most powerful warship the galaxy had ever seen. But it wasn't just the ship that was different. It was the resolve of the people. They had tasted betrayal too many times. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of peace and cooperation, had turned their back on Earth when the Krixa, a terrifying alien race, attacked. Humanity had pleaded for help, had begged the Council to send their fleets, to defend Earth against the invaders, but no help ever came. No fleets arrived. No reinforcements. The galaxy turned a blind eye to Earth's suffering. Billions had died in the initial wave of attacks. Cities were reduced to rubble, and whole populations were wiped out in days. Those who survived hid in the shadows, watching their once thriving world fall apart. The survivors swore they would never again beg for mercy or help. They vowed they would never again be at the mercy of others. The decision to abandon diplomacy came after years of humbling defeat. Humanity had learned that peace meant weakness in the eyes of the galaxy. They had learned that unless they had something to offer, no one would care, and so they had changed. The years of struggle and pain had forged them into something new. The people of Earth were no longer the helpless victims. They had become the hunters. The Ghost of Earth was the name given to their fleet, a fleet born from desperation, but powered by determination. The fleet moved through space silently, built from human ingenuity and wrath. As it moved into the dark void of space, it carried with it the fury of a species that had been abandoned, a species that had learned from the galaxy's indifference. Humanity would not be weak again. The Council had failed to see this coming. They had underestimated humanity's strength and resolve. As the leaders of the Galactic Council gathered in panic to discuss the sudden shift in humanity's behavior, they failed to realize the true gravity of the situation. The Ghost of Earth wasn't just a fleet, it was a statement, and the message it sent was chilling. No longer would humanity beg for peace. No longer would they remain silent while others plotted their destruction. The Ghost of Earth was a symbol of what had been abandoned, a peaceful, hopeful species that had been pushed too far. Humanity was now a force that no one could ignore, and the message it sent across the galaxy was loud and clear. Peace is no longer an option. As Earth's fleet moved deeper into space, the first signs of resistance from the galaxy's alien powers began to surface. Their spies, their informants, their most trusted officers reported sightings of the Ghost of Earth near distant colonies, approaching planets once considered untouchable. The old ways of diplomacy, treaties, and negotiations seemed useless in the face of humanity's power. The galaxy watched in disbelief as a species that had once been considered weak and helpless now stood with a fire in their eyes and weapons ready to strike. The question that hung in the air was no longer, what will humanity do next? But, what will the galaxy do about humanity? The once great powers of the galaxy, the Council included, had to quickly realize that they had failed to anticipate the wrath of a species that had been pushed to its limits. And now, with humanity standing tall, no one was sure if they could stop them. The galaxy was in for a rude awakening. A new force had emerged from the shadows, and it was driven by the pain of betrayal. Humanity had chosen power over peace, and the universe was about to see the consequences. The Ghost of Earth was only the beginning. The future was now in humanity's hands. The galaxy's greatest powers were beginning to feel the weight of humanity's decision. As the Ghost of Earth moved through the vast reaches of space, a cold wave of dread rippled across the stars. What was once a hopeful, peaceful species had transformed into a ruthless force, ready to enforce their own will upon the galaxy. The Galactic Council, who had once held the power to govern all, was now scrambling. They had thought that by ignoring humanity's pleas for help, they could control the situation. But they had gravely underestimated the strength and ingenuity of Earth. Now they were facing the consequence of their inaction. The leaders of the Council were split. Some called for negotiations, some advocated for a quick and decisive military response, but deep down, they all knew the truth. They had no idea what they were up against. It wasn't just Earth's fleet. That made them nervous. It was the determination behind it. Humanity had nothing left to lose. The Krixa, the brutal invaders that had nearly destroyed Earth, were still lurking at the edges of the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Humanity had fought and died on their own, with no one to turn to for help. Now, with the ghost of Earth at their command, the stakes were higher than ever. The first planets to fall were the smaller, more isolated ones. No one saw them coming. Humanity's ships, swift and deadly, struck without warning. Planetary defense systems were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer power of the warships. No negotiations, no mercy. The message was clear. Earth had come to reclaim its place in the galaxy, and they would not be ignored. Back on Earth, a sense of unity had settled among the survivors. The pain of their losses had forged a new resolve. People from all walks of life had come together to build the fleet. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers, those who had once been ordinary civilians, were now the backbone of humanity's military. Strength. They were no longer just survivors. They were conquerors. The technology behind the Ghost of Earth was a mix of advanced human engineering and desperate innovation. The fleet's weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Weapons that had once been used for peaceful purposes, like terraforming devices, were now turned into deadly tools of war. The warships were equipped with powerful plasma cannons, capable of decimating entire cities with a single shot. And the flagship, the Titan of Earth, was the crowning jewel of humanity's might, an enormous, nearly indestructible vessel that could lay waste to entire fleets with ease. As humanity's fleet continued to sweep across the galaxy, the larger, more powerful civilizations began to take notice. The first major encounter came when the Zorath Empire, a militaristic race known for their ruthless tactics, attempted to block the path of humanity's advancing fleet. The Zorath had never faced an enemy like this before. They were used to crushing lesser species with ease, but humanity wasn't backing down. The Zorath commanders believed they could overwhelm humanity's fleet with sheer force, but they soon found themselves fighting an opponent that didn't care about surrender or compromise. The battle was swift. Humanity's warships outmaneuvered the Zorath's enormous battlecruisers, using hit-and-run tactics that left the Empire's fleet in disarray. The Zorath were forced to retreat, but the damage had been done. The galaxy now knew humanity had no intentions of negotiating peace. Their message had been sent loud and clear. Meanwhile, back in the heart of the Galactic Council, panic spread like wildfire. Diplomats scrambled to send messages of peace, but the leaders of the galaxy were divided. Some advocated for peace talks, hoping to avoid further bloodshed, while others pushed for an all-out war to crush humanity once and for all. But none of them had considered the depth of humanity's anger, nor the scale of their response. The galaxy's most powerful fleets were now moving, but they were slow, disorganized. Humanity had taken the initiative, and they weren't going to stop. Every planet they visited, every ship they destroyed, was a message to the Council. The time for peace was over. Power was now the only language the galaxy would understand. As the war continued, humanity's reputation spread. Some saw them as invincible. Others feared they would destroy everything in their path. The Ghost of Earth had become more than just a fleet. It was the symbol of a new age, one in which humanity would not be ruled, but would rule itself. The galaxy had once looked down on Earth as a primitive, backward planet. Now, humanity stood as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. As the battles raged on, one thing became certain. Humanity had ignited a fire that would not be easily extinguished. Their fury had been unleashed, and there was no telling where it would end. The galaxy would never be the same again, and as each new enemy fell before them, humanity's thirst for revenge and power only grew stronger. The age of diplomacy was over. Now the galaxy would learn to fear the wrath of Earth.